Hi everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Hallmark Plus More, where we watch and talk about shows, movies, mysteries, Hallmark ornaments, and anything else that floats our boat. So today I'm going to be reviewing Elsbeth Season 2, Episode 20, which is the season finale. So before I get into the review, just want to say thank you to everybody who likes my videos, subscribes to my channel, leaves me comments. I appreciate it so much. If you have any comments, you can leave them below. I love interacting with everybody. So getting into this episode, it starts out right where the last episode ended with her entering the prison on her way to her cell. We find out the guard's name is Rocco. We see him several times in the episode. He befriends Elsbeth. And she walks through the men's side first before she gets to the women's side. And she sees some characters, some people she put away. And the first person she sees is Joe Dillon. And if you remember the case with him, he was the bar owner who kind of protected the people that went to his bar. They were like his friends and his family. So it's almost like he killed the person to help out one of his customers, because they were like family. He was kind of the Robin Hood. He kind of beat up the bully, so to speak. So she sees Joe first, then she sees Alex. And then, Alex is like, "Oh, do you remember me?" And Elsbeth was like, "You never forget your first." So I was like, okay, that's right. Season 1, episode 1. He was the theater director who killed a young college student. So he was very flirtatious. He was sleeping with his college students. So that was the very first season 1, episode 1, and that was Alex. So she later sees Mateo, which was the fashion designer. But those are the three men that she sees. And then she goes over to the women's side, right, to get to her cell. And she sees Quinn. So Quinn is the first one she sees. And Quinn Powers, she was the one who killed a man named Josh using a Zoom call. So she kind of recorded a message and then played it over a Zoom call to kind of have a fake alibi, a pre-recorded message. So that was Quinn. If I remember correctly, she kind of had her own company, and she killed somebody who was going to expose her. I think it was a reporter. So that was the first one she saw. Then she sees Freda, and Freda was the decluttering guru who killed her husband because she was jealous of the girlfriend they had together. And then she sees Vanessa, and Vanessa was Dr. Vanessa Holmes. She was the plastic surgeon who killed that young employee. She was leaving her practice to start another practice. And then she sees Margot Clark, and she was the matchmaker that killed one of her clients. She kind of faked his background so that she could match her or match him with a difficult client, a rich woman, and so she actually killed him, Gabriel. And then she sees Papetta, which is played by Alyssa Milano. I think she did great. I love that episode. And she killed Goldie, kind of started a mafia war. 14 people in the family was killed, and it was just this whole war that she started. And she owned the family Italian restaurant. And then the last person she sees, I'm sorry. Papeto was the last person she saw. Then she goes to her cell. So she's kind of seeing all these people that she put away, and they all remember Elsbeth, right? I would assume if I was put in jail, I would remember the person who put me there. But it was definitely nice to kind of go down memory lane. And that's why I kind of wanted to write down what all of their crimes were, because as it plays out in the episode, it's like, oh, yeah, they did that. So you see Paupetta cooking, because remember, she's the one who owned the family Italian restaurant, is part of the mafia. But, and then you see the plastic surgeon. She's like, doing cosmetic facelift or, putting coffee grounds on your eyes. And it's just interesting once you kind of know what they were put away for. It makes the episode that much more enjoyable because you're like, yes, they're playing into their characters, right? Especially Alex, right? He's the theater director. And he actually has been there a long time, the longest of all of the other characters, right? Season 1, episode 1. And he comes by the cell with a book cart. He's called like a trustee. He has a little vest and he exchanges books for the inmates. And Elsbeth can see you can write notes and kind of pass notes through books. So she's like, okay, maybe there's some kind of love connection or some kind of messaging going on between the books. And you find out, you meet the warden. Her name's Mrs. Martin. They call her Mama. And she gives them a lot of leeway, right? These are rich people in jail. And she allows Alex to come over to the women's side and act out plays. And they act out their own cases, which I thought was interesting. So somebody plays Elsbeth. I believe it was Quinn. And it's really kind of comical because Elsbeth is sitting there watching somebody else play her. And of course, Alex is like making Elsbeth, plant evidence and, do things that she doesn't really do. But it's interesting to kind of have her watch them play her. So you can kind of tell they have a lot of leeway. They have arts and crafts. Like I said, Papetta was cooking, so they allow her in the kitchen. So they wanted Elsbeth to come see, I think, just so that they can see how they're mocking her in front of her, right? And you still see Alex flirting with Quinn and the other women. So, I mean, he's the same guy he was, right? He was a theater director sleeping with all the young students and he killed one. And then that's when you see Mateo when they're, practicing the play. He's making costumes with old uniforms and duct tape, right? But he was a fashion designer, so it was nice to see him. And Alex kind of tells Elsbeth, like, yeah, I was the most hated person here until you showed up, right? So you kind of know the women know Alex is kind of a sleazeball, but there's not much to do there, and it's passing the time. And, you find out Elsbeth befriends Rocco, which is the guard, which of course, because Elsbeth, I mean, she befriends everybody, right? All the strangers are her friends. So I wasn't surprised when she got, was friends with Rocco. And he tells Elsbeth, like, yeah, I'm in trouble with the warden. She caught me watching cat videos and snuck up on me. So, he has to be on good behavior. But Elsbeth wants to trade in her book because I guess they only get one book. So Rocco takes her to the library, and that's where you find that Alex is dead. He was making ramen. So, you still see his bowl of ramen and he was stabbed. So now it's like, okay, who killed Alex, right? Because Alex told Elsbeth, yeah, I'm the most hated person. So he knew it and everybody didn't like him. So, of course, everybody's a suspect. And of course, everybody's a killer, right? They've all killed before. So it's not like, they don't have it in them to kill somebody. So definitely think it's interesting because, Elsbeth always shows who the killer is. And this one is just in a different setting. You're in prison, but you have to figure out who killed Alex with Elsbeth. So this kind of changes the dynamic of the Elsbeth shows. So this was definitely different because you don't see the killer commit the crime within the first 5 minutes of the show. So I like how this kind of did this episode a little different. You find out a lot about Alex, that, he used the book cart, but he was also taking money. Like, he was giving people things. You saw that he was getting Papetta some anchovies, and she gave him ramen. Like, okay, five ramen for, anchovies. And you find out he was getting people other stuff too, but not just exchanging for ramen. Elsbeth finds out that thousands of dollars exchanged hands. Um, and I think she found out from Joe. Joe was like, look, I don't have a lot of money like all these other people. They're getting a lot of stuff through money, right? So you do find that out, that obviously Alex delivers more than just books for exchange for money and ramen. And you definitely want to figure out who it was, because they all are capable of it. And when Elsbeth tries to find out their alibi and where they were, it was during free time, right? And like I say, the warden gives them a lot of leeway and allows them a lot of space. So it could be during arts and crafts. They were out on the yard, they were watching TV. So, I mean, he was definitely killed in a convenient time for people to be in different places. And as she talks to them, even though they're giving Elsbeth like where they were, I feel like there was holes in most of their stories. So like, oh, I was out in the yard. Well, this person said you were with them. Well, I was back and forth. Like, nobody really, had a solid alibi. Um, so I was sorry. I was just looking at my notes. So it was definitely interesting, because nobody was really helping Elsbeth, but Elsbeth wanted to figure it out, right? And of course, she's telling the warden, and the warden is like, "You're my eyes and ears." So the warden's kind of expecting her to figure it out. And what else does Elspeth have to do? She's in prison, so at least it gives her something to do. Um, and as she's talking to Papetta while, they're making food, because, right, she's helping with the kitchen with the food, she finds out that Papetta made a little knife, kind of like a razor blade out of cheese, and was telling her how she made it, just to cut stuff. Like, she wasn't using it to hurt anybody, but that had Elsbeth thinking, right? And she's like, yeah, my uncle was here. He had a girlfriend in the woman's side. He always said that he was going to make a tunnel out of here, but I never really thought he would, because, he didn't want to leave his girlfriend. So they were both in prison at the same time, which makes sense because their family's full of mafia. I'm sure, they've been arrested. And so I wasn't surprised by the story. But Elspeth figures out, like, the murder weapon was made out of ramen, because she kind of got the idea from what Paupetta was saying. And so she figures out what the murder weapon was and how it happened. Like, they made the murder weapon out of ramen, stabbed him, and then dropped it in the bowl of ramen, and it disappeared. Um, but Elspeth had an odor when she smelled the bowl of ramen when they found Alex. And that's kind of been like, what was that smell, right? What spices was that? And then she has a dream. And the dream that she has is all of the women kind of saying, why they would have killed him. And it's a singing and dance number. And it's actually from Chicago, Cell Block Tango, from the play that they made into a movie, Chicago. And I thought it was very well done. I loved it. All five women were in it. And Elsbeth was just kind of dreaming it, but it was very well done. And I'll tell you something personally about me. I have seen the play Chicago. I saw it years ago. Um, and I had no idea what Chicago was about. So I literally went to the play, and I was just mesmerized by it, because I had no idea it was about, a woman in prison. And I just loved the play. So I did not see the movie Chicago. I saw the play in a community theater, not necessarily on Broadway, but community theater is amazing. I don't know if you've ever seen your local community theater, but they're usually very good. I've gone to several different community theaters, and they all have very talented singers and actors. So I thought it was amazing. So I really enjoyed seeing that scene, the singing and dancing from Cell Block Tango from Chicago, because it just made me remember years ago when I saw the play. So very well done. Loved how they did that. Um, and then as Elsbeth, like after she has the dream, right, with the dance number, she's still trying to put everything together. She kind of knows how he was killed, but still doesn't have a motive of who, because there's so many suspects. And then the guard Rocco is telling Elsbeth, like, yeah, Alex was gonna get out of here. He's telling me he's gonna be transferred to a nicer facility, has a tennis court. And then she tells the warden, and the warden was like, yeah, he had a meeting with the DA, the day before he died. So now we're like, okay, what was he gonna tell the DA? Like, what was it about? The warden was like, well, maybe he was gonna tell him dirt on the other inmates. But that just didn't make sense to me. I was like, well, they're already in prison. I mean, how would that help his case? Like they've all been they're all already serving a sentence. So I thought that was odd that the warden said that. So I was kind of suspicious of the warden. Uh, and it turns out, Elsbeth, while they're eating, they're all complaining because since Elsbeth told on Papetta about having the blade, she can't cook anymore, and they were talking about how a great chef used to be there. And Elsbeth remembers the case. She was a chef that killed one of the people working for her. So Elsbeth caught that murderer that was the chef. And if you remember that case, she spent hours watching video of her cooking because the chef that she caught was very particular with her food. So Elsbeth was like, that's the smell. So was able to solve the murder. It was the warden. When the chef was there, she made her own weapon, and the warden kept it and then used it to kill Alex, put it in the ramen. So the smell that Elsbeth smelled from the ramen was the ingredients from the previous cook. Because since the cook made it out of ramen, she was very rigid with her, ingredients, very particular. So that's how she was able to kind of nail the warden for killing Alex, because Alex was exchanging for money and other things, not just books. But the warden was the one he was giving all the money to. The warden was the one who was giving people all of these other things in prison, and she was making a killing. She was just, in lack of a better term, she was making a lot of money from it. Just kind of, so she was making money off the inmates. And the only person that knew was Alex, because Alex was collecting everything, bringing everything from the warden to give to the inmates, and then giving the warden all the money back. And it turns out the tunnel was real because she used the tunnel to get from the men's side to the women's side to kill Alex. So I love that Elsbeth solved it and that the warden, was the one. I was always a little suspicious of the warden. Just because I didn't think any of the people that she was in prison with, I didn't think the inmates did it. So I was like, who else could it be? It can't be Rocco. He just seems too nice, and he's helping Elsbeth. Not that nice people can't commit crimes, because Elsbeth has arrested nice people who have committed crimes, but I just didn't get the feel from Rocco. So I was like, who else could it be? It has to be the warden. However, that being said, I did enjoy the episode, like I said, because you were figuring it out right along with Elsbeth, because you don't know who the killer is, which is so different than a normal Elsbeth episode. And meanwhile, while she's doing this, you are seeing Kayla and Captain Wagner trying to get her out of prison, right? They're kind of like, we have to get her out. And she wants to get her out before she goes into this training. Remember, she accepted a special task force with the other captain, Captain Kershaw, the woman captain. So Kayla's going to leave by the end of the week. So she really wants to see Elsbeth before she goes, because you don't know how long she's going to be gone. So they go to the judge, And Captain tries to talk to the judge just one on one, and he doesn't budge. He has it in for Elsbeth. So they end up finding out, and the person who finds out is Teddy, which is Elsbeth's son. So I love that. I want to make sure I mention that. That was, one of the great things about this episode is Teddy is the one who kind of starts the process and is really the reason Elsbeth is able to get out of prison. He comes to Captain Wagner, Teddy, Elsbeth's son, and says, "Hey, I found a connection, right? Was we were trying to figure out how Judge Crawford got over the Mertzen case, right? I mean, he was the killer, but how did he become the judge? Little convenient. So that was how we found out the foundation that covers up and pays for things. Um, Actually paid this judge to go on a media junket that weekend, and he brought somebody with him. So that's kind of how Crawford got on the Mertzen case. So they were able to confront him. He's cheating on his wife with somebody else, and they basically kind of said, "Hey, about Elsbeth, you're going to let her go." So they kind of were able to get leverage on the judge. So I love that. So they were able to get Elsbeth out of jail, and not before she, obviously solves the case and figures out the warden was the one who did it. And what's interesting is, the inmates are finding out that Alex wasn't the supplier, that the warden was the supplier. So Paupetta, Alyssa Milano, is like, "Look, you ruined our lives, and now you've ruined prison, right? Because you ruined our lives, you put us in jail. We're having all these luxuries now in jail, and now you just arrested our supplier for murder. So the warden was the one who was giving us all this stuff. Now she's arrested. Now we're going to have a new warden. Now you've ruined jail for us." So, and Elsbeth, tells the warden, because the warden's like, "What did it matter? He was a bad person. He was already in jail." And Elsbeth is like, "The truth always matters." So I like that she said that, right? It's similar to the other case where that rich kid killed the royalty prince, right? "Well, I thought he was homeless. It doesn't matter." And Kayla was like, "Everybody matters, right? Just because you thought he was a nobody and he turned out to be a prince, but even if he was just a homeless person, there is no just a homeless person. He's a human being. We need to treat everybody with respect. The truth matters. You just don't kill people that you think don't matter." So I feel like that kind of resonates with me as the same way Kayla said that to that rich kid. Like, "Hey, everybody matters. You don't decide who's important and who's not important." So when Elsbeth tells the warden, "The truth matters, you still killed a human being." So they have this party now that Kayla is leaving, and she still doesn't know that Elsbeth has been released. So Elsbeth surprises her at the party, and she gives a speech. Elsbeth gives a speech. It's really a sweet moment. She gives this speech about saying, "This is where Kayla needs to be, and where I need to be is here," right? We all have a place where we need to be, and where the good work we need to do. So it was a really sweet speech and a sweet moment, and she was able to say goodbye to Kayla. So I love that. I thought they ended it really well. The takeaways, the cliffhangers, what we might look forward to in season 3. I didn't really see any cliffhangers, really. I mean, they kind of wrapped everything up. Elsbeth gets out of jail. They find the killer in jail, that it was the warden. Kayla is still going away. Teddy is there with her. So I really didn't see many cliffhangers. What I think we might see in season 3, I mean, that's the couple questions I have. Are we going to see Kayla in training in season 3? Or are they going to have season 3 pick up, 6 months later or a year later when she's done her training and she's undercover and that comes into a case? Or is she going to finish her training and then come back to the station? Or like, that's going to be interesting to me how they start out season 3, because we obviously know Kayla's going to be a while in this training. However, I love all the characters, so I hope she comes back. I still want her to be a regular on the show. So I think it's interesting how they're going to play that angle with her. Also, is there going to be a regular to team up with Elsbeth? We have seen a couple different people she's teamed up with, women detectives. So, are they going to bring in like a brand new character that's going to be her regular detective? If they're going to put Kayla in training, so that's going to be interesting to see kind of where they go with Elsbeth and who she teams up with. Is it going to be different every week? Or is, like I say, Kayla gonna leave or finish and come back? And since it was Teddy that found the evidence that ultimately led Captain Wagner to leverage the judge to get Elsbeth, to let go of prison and get her out of prison. I hope they see Teddy, right? I love the scenes with Teddy and Elsbeth because Elsbeth's demeanor changes a little bit when she's around her son. I like seeing her as a parent. As a mom of a son, I love seeing that because it's just a different dynamic, right? We're a little different when we're around our children. We're more protective, we act a little differently because we're with them. So I like that. I hope we see Teddy some more because I really hope they have that conversation, and Elsbeth says, "Oh, you did some detective work. Like, thank you for what you did. You were able to help get me out of prison." So I like that. I hope Teddy will be back. So there are a couple, questions about what they're going to do with season three. Not that many cliffhangers, but all in all, I loved it. I loved the singing and dancing number from Chicago. I loved seeing all the returning characters. It was just a great way to wrap up the season. So I'm excited for season three. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you enjoyed my review. And until next time, I will see you then. Bye.